The House Intelligence Committee impeachment hearings have wrapped up, and reports will be issued this week. House Democratic leaders are stating there's enough evidence to impeach, while House Republicans appear to not be so convinced. Over in the Senate, initial preparations are being made to conduct a Senate trial in case the House votes to impeach. In the meantime, the House Judiciary Committee is planning its first hearing midweek. In his weekly online column, former Congressman Ron Paul said that the real bombshell of the impeachment proceedings is something that no one appears to be discussing. He wrote that no matter who is elected president of the United States, the permanent government will not allow a change in our aggressive interventionist foreign policy, particularly when it comes to Russia. We'll look at the details behind this claim in this episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. Dr. Paul hit the nail directly on the head with his conclusion about Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's testimony during the public impeachment hearings. Dr. Paul concludes that Vindman did not come forth with first-hand evidence that President Trump had committed any high crimes or misdemeanors. He brought a complaint against the president because he was worried that Trump was shifting U.S. policy away from providing offensive weapons to the Ukrainian government. Dr. Paul goes a step further to identify which group would be most worried by the president's actions of shifting U.S. policy. In his online article, he wrote, according to his testimony, Vindman was concerned over influencers promoting a false narrative of Ukraine inconsistent with the consensus views of the interagency. Now, his next sentence is key. Dr. Paul states, consensus views of the interagency is another word for deep state. So folks, think about it. Recall what the anonymous author mentioned in his or her letter to the editor in the New York Times, that many of the senior officials, like the anonymous author, in the Trump administration are working diligently from within to frustrate parts of Trump's agenda and his worst inclinations. Now, when you reread this September 5th, 2018 letter from a viewpoint of Vindman and others who don't like the president's changes, you begin to understand more fully of why impeachment proceedings are occurring, as well as what the president is up against. He's not so much up against a resistance of Democrats as he is, say, a resistance of big government advocates or globalists that want to see the trajectory of the last century of both Republican and Democratic policies to build a new world order. The establishment Republican and Democratic parties were both taken by surprise by the election of President Trump, and neither of them will carry on many of his policies once he is out of office. The anonymous author pointed to Trump's lack of affinity for ideals long espoused by conservatives. The author discussed bright spots from Trump that point to a general overall view of conservatism, but then complains about Trump's foreign policy. It's this complaining that outs this person as possibly a neoconservative, but definitely a big government advocate that might merely offer platitudes when discussing constitutional limitations on the federal government. Now, recall that the author wrote, this isn't the work of the so-called deep state. It's the work of the steady state. The steady state has had nearly zero resistance over the last century to its philosophy of growing government outside of its constitutional limitations and shedding American sovereignty to global organizations. When along comes a president that is not part of this cabal and begins to dismantle and expose their plans, those in the steady state or deep state come unglued to create the pressure needed to not only thwart the president's agenda, but to get him out of office. Let's not forget also that in 2018, there was talk of calling Trump's mental state into question in order for his cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment. Now, during the public impeachment hearings, the argument is framed in view of national security. Dr. Paul rightly concludes that one by one, the parade of witnesses before House Intelligence Committee Chairman Schiff sang from the same songbook. And that same songbook being that they do not like the direction of America first and are willing to do what it takes to get back to building that aggressive interventionist foreign policy that spreads democracy abroad. But there is one aspect of this that seems totally out of character. Folks that we would view as being in the deep state or steady state endorsed the renegotiated NAFTA agreement that Trump administration ramrodded. In our estimation, this new agreement, called the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, furthers the globalist agenda, which is a total reversal of America First. So, could it be that the deep state is using impeachment to solidify Trump's base in order to get more than enough support to pass the USMCA? Or is Trump using the USMCA as a political tool to leverage 2020 votes away from Democrats by knowing that the USMCA will not pass so that he can blame it on Democrats? Or could it be that Trump has not read the agreement but trusts those under him too much? Well, only time will tell. But we do know that while the impeachment process is largely political, that the steady state is grasping at straws. It may fool the average big media consumer, but it cannot fool an educated electorate. And that is what the John Birch Society creates in localities all across the country. We do so by distributing information about specific issues that will determine the amount of control that government will have over you. If you're interested in receiving the truth and not the false reality that the deep state has established, then please sign up for our free daily news headlines at thenewamerican.com. Links are in the video description. And until next time, we'll see you then.